In case they ban it, you know.
Right, yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. So, yeah, you just need to, like, you can be prepared to say, okay, this is just my Shaman Destroyer, and then, you know, if this deck loses, then fine. You know, I've 1-for-1 with the best deck in the format. That's given me more freedom on what I ban, so.
Sure.
Okay, guys. It seems like we are starting the match, so I'm gonna give you the field here, and it's Sjow versus Shtan. Take it away, guys.
All right.
Thank you, Lothar. So yeah, Argent Squire opening here, and it looks like it's the Cthulhu Warrior from... it's actually Cthulhu Warrior from Shtan by the looks of things, and it's Sjow on the Zoo. Was half expecting it to be the other way around. Of course, Sjow has been streaming marathon sessions of Cthulhu Warrior recently, so...
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting opening from the aggro shaman. He doesn't have the tunnel trog, he doesn't have the totem golem, the early game power cards that you really want to be seeing, but in the same token, these are minions that are very sticky and resilient to things like Fiery War Axe, so even though they're not quite as powerful as your other potential cards, it's going to be annoying for Stan to have to clean up these minions, and we see him already having to War Axe just a bubble off of an Argent Squire, and it's not very efficient, but gets the job done.
Yeah, he has that revenge in hand, so that's the threat he's setting up. Shtan udachi, Sjow, will be thinking about, you know, Ravaging Ghoul as well as revenge, various whirlwind effects. But yeah, this is an annoying start for a Fiery War Axe to contest with. We had a discussion yesterday about, you know, when Zoo gets this opening to kind of resist the Fiery War Axe, they don't really do enough damage to the warrior over time. But damage is not something the shaman generally has to worry about. So the sticky start is a lot more powerful.
Yeah, it's just because they have Doomhammer in the later stages. So they definitely make up their damage pretty quick, but with Stan having not really too much of an issue dealing with Sjow's early start, it doesn't really get in too much chip damage. Like normally you'd expect the Shaman to be pushing through a lot more damage. Totem Golem on average on 2, if you coin it out, if you coin it out on 1, gets like 9 damage. So even that alone, like, Stan has like a very comfortable life total, and the Harrison Jones, which is going to shut down the Doomhammer later on, which Sjow's going to be banking on to make up for the lost damage in the early game.
Yeah, picks up Ravaging Ghoul as well, which is another extremely useful card in this matchup. The one thing working against him right now is that he hasn't been able to get any Cthulhu buffs off and does have that Shield Bearer in hand, which again can be absolutely backbreaking in the late game. Double Brawl Ravaging Ghoul, though, he does have board clears for days, and Sjow's hand is dictating that he plays on the board right now, so all these answers in Shtan's hand are going to be pretty effective.
Yeah, no execute for the 7/7 though, so this Brawl, if it comes out next turn, if he doesn't find something better, this Brawl could be pretty game deciding, honestly.
Yeah, there's no choice. He has to Brawl, doesn't want to start taking repeated damage from that 7/7, but 1 in 3 times he's in an ugly situation here, but he instead gets the absolute best outcome, preserves his Fiery War Axe even, and now the Doomhammer is drawn, which means it could spell Sjow's downfall pretty early here, but I've seen a lot of players as the meta progresses, you know, kind of hold on to Doomhammer as a last resort. You know, if they think they can play on the board, they continue to do that.
But
and then
Kenny...
Right, and the thing is he also has the Rockbiter straight away, so he knows he can at least jam that 10 damage straight through before the threat of the Harrison Jones come out, but Bran Ravaging Ghoul is a pretty solid answer to that board state.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting combo, and he does end up committing the Fiery War Axe to the Flame Tank Totem. He thought about it for a second. I like committing it. Sometimes you can get away with holding it there, but it's too afraid of potential taunts coming out and whatnot. And here comes that Doomhammer. He just needs to fight back on board. He can't win the game without this Doomhammer going off, so he has to play the risk against Harrison Jones here. And
welp.
Yeah, sometimes the risk does not pan out for you.
Yeah, the interesting thing as well is that the threat of the Bran made him have to respect that and take that out, which then held him back from using the Rockbiter, so he actually loses the overall damage from that as well by getting his Doomhammer Harrison. So, Shtan udachi is going to have every resource he needs from the rest of the game. I'm sure he will pick up some Cthulhu minions here. There you go, you see 2 already. So now suddenly those 2 Shield Bearers are pretty solid. Justicar as well does burn the big wall in his deck, though, so no huge taunt's going to come out in the near future, but he has the board, he has comfortable life total, he has life gain for days in his hand. It's looking like he's in a solid spot.
Yeah, it's pretty much impossible for Sjow to come back in this game, but I imagine we're going to see him stick around and play it all the way through just to try and gain as much information on Shtan's deck as he possibly can, because in the last Hero Standing format, Shtan is going to play this Warrior again if he wins with it.
Yes, indeed. One of the big differences in strategy between Last Hero Standing and Conquest, of course, the other is kind of the threat of concealed information. You can affect your pick order in ways where you don't have to play a particular deck, and particularly through the course of a whole tournament, that can actually gain you a significant advantage. So that's basically what this game is going to come down to now, is, you know, which player can reveal what information to the other. But for now, It's looking pretty miserable. There is a complete board clear here while playing 2 Cthulhu minions, which means the job is done for Cthulhu in terms of activating those shield bearers. So suddenly there is a 20 additional life gain in Shtan's hand on top of a Justicar.
Not too bad. Not too bad. And he's already not even under any threat of dying in the immediate anyway, so additional 20 on top of that, pretty ridiculous. And I doubt Shtan is going to reveal any of the key cards in his hand. Right now we see Emperor and Doomcaller, pretty important. Not typically standard cards in the Cthulhu Warrior. A lot of players just run Justicar over the Doomcaller package. So kind of interesting about that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, in my experience, people tend to run either Elise or Doomcaller.
Oh, yeah,
that's
what I meant. I didn't mean Justicar. They all run Justicar.
I was going to say, like, Firebat, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You're a smart dude. But,
sorry,
like,
I meant Elise.
Cutting Justicar, So, and, like, Emperor is an inclusion I've seen going in more recently because you can do some pretty broken things with Bran when you have an Emperor at hand. And it just makes a lot of sense.
Wow,
you know,
he does show it.
He does show it, yeah. Like you said, it's interesting. Not really caring to conceal the information right now. He could have just carried on through this game with Justicars and Shield Bearers and would have been just fine. But he's going to go ahead and slam the Emperor, give Sjow the knowledge, and you see Sjow frantically scribbling notes down on a piece of paper now.
Yeah, he's definitely writing about that Emperor Thorstein. It's not in every single Cthulhu Warrior, so it's paying off for him staying in this game. Sometimes when you stay in the game, you can get a little bit tilted because you're just sitting here knowing you have no chance of winning and dragging it out. But if you keep your mind right, stay focused, try and get the notes in there, it's pretty important.
Yeah, he's just going to go ahead and jam the Cthulhu here. Not quite lethal, but still, it gets the job done right now. 33 life, massive board. Sjow decides that is enough, but like you said, at least picked up a little nugget of information in a game that was a completely lost cause as soon as that Harrison came down. So, small victory for Sjow in the most minor way possible.
Yeah, and maybe you can extrapolate more from the Emperor Thorstein. Like, at least you know he's playing some sort of weird cards in there. Maybe you think, well, he's got Emperor Thorstein, so maybe he's got some sort of combo-oriented win condition.
Right.
Maybe he doesn't run the Elise off of that, and you start piecing things together, because I feel like it's more likely to be running a Doomcaller variant if you're running Emperor Thorstein, because those tend to work better together than Elise works together. I'm not saying like guaranteed or anything, right? But it's something that can be in the back of your mind, and then you see 1 or 2 more cards that string those ideas together, and then you make some reads based on it, and then that can actually affect your playstyle a little bit.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, but Sjow very quickly recues. He's going to go with his Warlock here, so it's going to be Zoo against Control Warrior, Cthulhu Warrior in particular, and pre-standard, I think Zoo did fairly well against most builds of Control Warrior, unless it was very, very heavily teched, but suddenly the lack of stickiness in the deck can be a problem when you're running up against a double Brawl deck that now also has access to things like, Ravaging Ghouls and Revenges and mass ways to clear your board, and as you were pointing out the other day when we were talking about this, it's just a pretty low-power deck now with Zoo. Like, the minions don't really hurt, which gives the Control Warrior a lot of time.
Yeah, and if you give them time, they get to the mana where they can play those brawls and get those combos off and build up to the point where they can drop their giant shield bearers and gain 10 armor. And Sjow does not have the most aggressive start in the world, but he does have the Darkshire Councilman, which is one of the key cards. Really, in this matchup, I find, as the Zoo Warlock, you either need Flame Imp or Darkshire Councilman. Otherwise, you just don't really do anything, and there's no really threat to the warrior. They can just armor pass all the time and kind of wait it out. So at least he has the Councilman going for him.
Just a point I want to bring up. You see in Shjow's lineup there, he has a Hunter available to him. So, default opinion would be, mid-range Hunter, pretty damn solid at beating up Control Warriors. So why do you think he led with the Zoo here instead of the Hunter?
I don't know. Maybe it's some sort of crazy Yogg Hunter, and he doesn't feel comfortable using it against the armor gain of Cthulhu Warrior. Because Yogg Hunter is really good against control, but can run into trouble against Cthulhu Warrior in particular, just because they gain so much additional life. So I'm thinking maybe it's Yogg Hunter, as weird as that sounds.
I just think, is there any reason why he'd want to hold the Hunter back? Because I'm thinking, like, sometimes in Last Hero Standing, you don't expose a deck because you earmark it for a specific matchup in the lineup. But it feels like if you were going to do that, the matchup that you were earmarking it for was the Control Warrior. So, I don't
maybe Face Hunter? It's either, I feel like it can't be a mid-range Hunter, right? It has to be some other sort of Hunter. But he's off to a great start with the Zoo, just doing crazy amounts of work here, and we can see Shtan has a bunch of like greedy cards in his deck. You have the Harrison Jones teched in there in Cthulhu Warrior. That plus the Cthulhu activators makes it a lot less consistent against Zoo. He has the Sylvanas in there as well, which isn't always in the Cthulhu Warrior. And then he has the Emperor Thorstein, and he's got the Doomcaller package. So we can see that this Cthulhu Warrior is definitely geared more towards beating control. Maybe Sjow was able to pick up on that, and that's why he's going the zoo route and just trying to take him to the zoo instead of queuing up into a control deck in it, which appears to be what Shtan's teching for.
Yeah, very, very possible. But the important thing for Sjow here is that he's picked up a bunch of important cards. Like you said, the Councilman early to be a threat, and then he's also picked up an Argus, which is one of the best cards in turning those small threats in your deck into large threats and actually being able to pressure the Warrior significantly. But as you can see here, like it's turn 6 for the Zoo. The Warrior still has 24 health and just feels perfectly comfortable dropping Sylvanas here to try and contest this board.
Yeah, and the scariest thing about this as the Zoo player is you're just like, I really hope you don't have Brawl.
Right.
Because if Sylvanas comes down and Brawl follows, you're pretty much dead unless you trade into it. And if you trade into it, then you give the Warrior player so much time that you're probably dead. So you have to kind of all in, hope they don't have Brawl. And we can see from Shtan's hand, there's no Brawl available to him. So
I like the commitment from Sjow, though, to going face. I think in a lot of situations like this, if you trade into Sylvanas, you're essentially brawling yourself, right? By the time that you've, like, traded in 2 minions and you've lost another one to the death rattle, like, you've kind of given them the credit for having Brawl even when they don't have it. So Sjow goes ahead and says, no, buddy, you have to have it here. If you don't, you're going to be in a huge mess because that Sylvanas is going to be way too slow.
Yep, I agree with it. I like the line of play, especially with the Soulfire in hand. He's got the burn damage to follow it up if there is no Brawl. Power Overwhelming top deck.
That should do it.
Yeah, that is going to clean this one up really quick. So it's interesting to think about, like, if the Hunter is a mid-range Hunter, then we have to assume he's made some sort of reads based on the information that Shtan's given him that it's more control-oriented and has these slower cards. He did see Emperor Thorsen, which is bad against Zoo. And he saw Harrison Jones, which is bad against Zoo. And if he was able to extrapolate that, or maybe he's watched Shtan's stream, knows Shtan likes to play Doomcaller variants of Cthulhu Warrior maybe, then he's able to pick up on that information, realizing that maybe Zoo's better than Mid-Hunter against it.
Yeah, makes sense. Just at the end there as well, it's worth noting that he used the top deck Power Overwhelming instead of the Soulfire that he had, and that's not like a tilt thing. That's, again, concealed information, right?
You don't want to show him Soulfire.
You don't necessarily have Soulfire in your deck. Most of the time, you've got Power Overwhelming in there. No one sees a Power Overwhelming comes out, okay, better write down that he plays Power Overwhelming.
But you would write down Soulfire for sure.
Exactly.
It's sometimes a 1 of, sometimes a 2 of, most of the time a 0 of, though.
Yeah. So Villager going to come out again from Sjow on the early turn, and there is a Huckster in the hand of Shtan Udachi, which is a pretty solid indicator that this is going to be the N'Zoth build.
Interesting, he chooses to hold it back here, just get the dagger out to try and clear off the possessed Villager, remove the ability for Zoo minions to be buffing a ton. Yeah,
I mean, I like it. Your dagger trades for that entire possessed Villager. The Huckster is only going to trade for the front half of it most of the time because your Zoo is entitled to have a buff to trade into that nicely. So now he can drop the 2/2 against the Direwolf, and he takes care of the remainder of the Villager. So over the course of 2 turns, he's got a lot more done by doing it this way.
Yeah, really nice little things like this that in the early game can stop Zoo from snowballing as hard. It's great play. I guess you dropped the 3-drop.
Yep. I mean,
he will be thinking about things like
Shadow Strike on curve, etc. But when your alternative is tap Voidwalker, it doesn't look particularly great.
Actually, the Voidwalker protects the Direwolf Alpha, so there is some consideration for it. And yeah, it looks like he's gonna go for the tap Voidwalker, protect his Direwolf Alpha. Yeah. It does make your further turns a little bit more awkward though, because you have so much mana in your hand as a Zoo player, you know?
And that backstab pickup is pretty crushing. I'm not sure what that card is on the far left. Looks like a little bit like a Farseer, possibly?
Yeah, it's a Farseer.
So he has options here. He can value trade just with the dagger and pick up the trade on the 1/3, but he's just going to go ahead and develop his board here. Again, I mean, the merit of the dagger is pretty solid there, because anytime you can completely clear Zoo's board, you neuter so many cards in their deck. So interesting that he chose to go with the Farseer development there instead.
Yeah, I would have liked to see maybe the 2/2 trade in and then heal the 2/2 with the Farseer.
True.
Like, your health is pretty irrelevant against Zoo for the most part, as long as you have the board. As soon as you lose the board, things get weird. Maybe he feels like his hand's not strong enough to hold the board this game, so he's going to have to worry about that burst range a little bit later on, so he goes with the heal to his face, because his hand is Sap Abyss, which isn't great.
And Show's hand kind of dictates that he sets up the best possible potential for Defender of Argus right now, because if those do not start finding targets fairly soon, then he's going to be in a lot of trouble this game. But suddenly that Pillager draw makes the prep and removal spell combination in his hand so much better. When you can tempo them out with a minion as well, especially a minion as aggressive as Tomb Pillager, then suddenly, you know, throwing card advantage out the window to take tempo against Zoo is always the way you're going to win. So.
Yep, that's your whole game plan, your whole overview of how to play the matchup really as Rogue is you want to kill minion while playing minion.
Yes.
That's the whole game. And he's able to do that right there and in a great spot now.
Yeah, that looks like N'Zoth coming off the top. Yes, it is. So that is the one card he will not have been wanting to see for a very long time in this matchup. So suddenly now this is looking like the hand that it was on the previous turn before the Tomb Pillager is drawn. He doesn't really have anything to achieve greater momentum on this turn, but he does have decent answers for the board in front of him at least.
Do you ever trade in the Huckster instead of protecting it with the Eviscerate just to get another option this turn?
Yeah, I was really considering it. It definitely does seem like, there's some Warlock cards that would be fairly useful in this situation, but there's kind of a cognitive trap when playing against Zoo that you expect to get a Zoo-y card a lot of the time when you trade in a Huckster, whereas there's a lot of Warlock cards that are really useless in that situation.
Yeah. And of course, the Warlock class cards for the most part are pretty underwhelming just because the hero power is so strong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, another well-timed Tomb Pillager, and I'm sure we'll see Sap number 2 come out here just to maintain the dominance, although whichever minion he saps, he doesn't really have good trades on the board remaining, so it's not as backbreaking as it could be, but I think with no card draw in hand, essentially with an empty hand, because N'Zoth is not going to do anything, he needs to make sure that these minions in play just really get work done right now.
And he has to hope to get maybe lucky off the Huckster the next turn. I really like how he's been just like using all of his resources every turn to maintain tempo. It's how you win the matchup, and then also, thinking about it, I think preserving the Huckster to get chip damage in and have resources to clear with it until you're out of options.
Right.
Keep it on the board, and then once you're out of options, then go for the Hail Mary play to try and find an option.
And actually, thinking about it, these 2 Tomb Pillagers dying is going to generate 2 coins, which means that N'Zoth is playable on turn 8 and will bring back 2 Tomb Pillagers as well as this Huckster after it trades off. So suddenly he has the ability to make a massive board on turn 10. Journey Below is just going to get him another Death Rattle to play. He's going to decide between the Sentinel and the Huckster here. No way he's going to take a Nubarak. Just how much he values the resources in hand versus the slightly larger body right now. What do you like?
I like the 4/4. I think it just play the 4/4 out there this turn. You have the mana to do it. You're not doing anything else with your turn, and then just go face with the Huckster. The argument for the Huckster is you have the ability to trade in your Huckster to try and find something else to play on this turn. And it's kind of inconsistent that you actually find anything, and your opponent's likely to trade into it anyway.
That is a pretty solid draw.
Yeah, you can activate it this turn as well.
You certainly can. Argus in the middle, trade into the 2/2. Gormok takes out the Sentinel without it being buffed, but that almost... I mean, it seems ridiculous saying this dreamy board clear plays exactly into Shtan's hands right now, but since his following turn is Coin N'Zoth, he's kind of okay with these Death Rattle minions dying.
Yeah. This would be a really tricky spot if he didn't have Coin N'Zoth. Really tricky. And even still, Coin N'Zoth does not bring any taunts. And that's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 damage on the board. He's going to draw 2 minions. If they're not minions, they're burn spells. So that means he's 1 damage off lethal.
Yes, indeed. And the backstab, for once against Zoo, actually does not get a lot of work done here. He's just going to go ahead and backstab the Councilman by the looks of things so that it doesn't have a good trade on the board anymore. And potentially get that damage in. But yeah, there's no good target that he could use backstab to remove damage. So now, suddenly, that adds 2 to the board straight away.
Okay. So the board space issues here prevent him from finding lethal.
Yep. So he has actually whiffed, which means this board being this massive board that Shtan's been able to generate suddenly becomes relevant because he has to be a little bit worried about dying on the backswing, but not too much. He has both of those powerful taunts in play, and as we discussed in the intro, this is not a deck that you fear burst damage from.
Yeah, exactly. He needs to try and optimize the efficiency of Forbidden Ritual here, right? So you want to get as many minions off of it as you can since you have so few cards in your hand so that you can flood as much as possible and set up lethal on the next turn and have your opponent be unable to trade into all of the 1/1s so you can get the last remaining damage. And you want to lose as little damage as possible while trading. So I feel like he wants to trade off the 4 minions that aren't Councilmen, then use the tentacles, and then just punch face with the Councilmen and try and set up lethal with the remaining tentacles in the following turn. Is the way that I would try and approach this turn, because you don't lose as much damage that way because the Councilman is able to generate so many damage because your trades are still kind of generating damage because you get to replenish the minions on the board.
I like it. I mean, Sjow is going to go with a slightly different line here, pushes through. I mean, the part of this that I find dangerous is that the Anubisath Sentinel has that clean trade straight into the 10-4 now, which actually doesn't reduce power on the board because the buff passes over. So suddenly...
Oh, the Fan of Knives!
That is a savage Fan of Knives right now. He that's just dream world right there. That's one of those situations where you will be just praying for your deck to give you the fan. Picks it up, and he can trade into the Imp Gang boss here. Even if the 1/1 was to be spawned, which it won't, it's not even going to be relevant. And now suddenly Sjow is basically just on burst damage to win. Whatever that is, whether it's Leroy, whether it's Doomguard, whatever's in his deck, and the Soulfire that's been hidden in the previous game. That's all he's going to have right now, because he will never get this board back from this point.
Yeah, that's what's so great about Shjow's previous turn, though, is he set himself up so that he would have the out of Soulfire as well. That's why that 4 damage is so important to set him to. That's why he didn't make as many trades as he could have made, didn't play it as safe as he could have made, because he wants the Rogue to be at exactly 4 health. So he has that Soulfire, Leroy, Doomguard, whatever else.
Picks up Doom. Not too likely to have a huge impact in this game. This is going to come down right now to 2 draws from a zoo. For Doomguard, Leroy, or Soulfire, whatever the combination of cards are in the deck, he needs them right now. We know there's a Soulfire. That's a brick. He's going to have one more draw at it.
Dark Peddler, maybe?
Oh, that is a brutal game for Sjow.
Wow.
I mean, what a ridiculous game, right?
Yeah.
Generally, whenever you see like Rogue queuing into Zoo, the way you think the matchup's going to be decided, you're talking about Backstab SI early, you're talking about maybe an early Edwin, you're talking like a crucial fan of knives. No one really expects a game to be decided by coin N'Zoth. That's not really the way it usually works.
And I guess that's the power of N'Zoth Rogue, and that's why people believe in it, why so many players have been bringing it here and been doing so well with it on ladder. It does do pretty good against the aggressive decks, having that N'Zoth as a backup plan. It's just trickier to play, right? You have to save those coins for those key moments instead of always using them with Gadgets and Auctioneer, because you have those weird, unorthodox threats. And interesting to see it played out. And we get to see it played again here against the Hunter from Sjow, which appears to be a mid-range Hunter.
Yeah, so the mystery remains as to his pick order decision there. See if he wins through the series. It'll be really interesting to ask him about that if we do get to interview him. But this is a matchup that I've had a little bit of experience in myself. Huckster is your dream card in this matchup. If you get turn 1 or turn 2 Huckster, because of how poor the early game minions are from Hunter, just trades so effectively that you get off to such a fantastic start. But I mean, the other way you can get off to a fantastic start is the Hunter just having nothing to play.
Oh, yeah. It could run in a little bit awkward here. He doesn't have great ways to deal with Animal Companion. He has the Eviscerate, which he can combo with things from below, which is okay, but it's nowhere near as good as like Backstab SI. Now he's picked up the Huckster. You can go with that, or you can just develop a Tomb Pillager into it because it's a Leok, and it's not very threatening.
Yeah, because it's a Leok. As if Leok didn't feel bad enough about his life, Firebat. You have to talk about him in that condescending tone as well. And come on, the guy already has self-esteem issues.
Yeah.
There's no need to rub it in.
Well, he is going to respect the Leok, though.
Okay.
So Leok pulls it back a little bit, gets some respect. He doesn't just develop the minion into the Leok. He actually slays it. So.
Also, I think if you're Sjow here, you are 100% certain your opponent has Tomb Pillager in hand.
Oh, yeah. He moused over it and
yeah,
showed
he
you.
coined, he went to a card on the left-hand side, and then he changed his play to the 2-drop Pacifist. So you definitely know there is a Tomb Pillager coming in your near future.
Yep. Not winning the Joust there. Most of the time, you don't really win the Joust unless you're getting the Joust effects after you've played the Camel and sort of pulled the 1-drops out of your deck. So it's such a double-edged, like... Oh, the buzzer. It's pretty funny. With the thing is, with the Joust effects on the 3-2 there, like, most of the time the King's Elec is not going to win the Joust, especially, though, if you don't have a good opening. And when you need it to win the Joust is when you have a bad opening, but that's when all of your small drops are in your deck.
Yep.
So it just snowballs even harder against you.
And yeah, I mean, I guess we deadly shot the Tomb Pillager. We do still have the spare one in hand for Gadgetzan Auctioneer, but Journey from Below is just going to pick up Tomb Pillager number 2. It's 27% to pick up any particular rogue minion from Journey from Below, so you are pretty likely to get, you know, if you're aiming for a Huckster on turn 2, a Pillager or Zarol on turn 4, you have pretty good odds of hitting it a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful card, and South Sea Squidface isn't even that bad.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some people running it in the deck, at least experimenting with it. Yeah, experimenting with it and then realizing, this is not that good. I'm going to take it out and go back to Zarol.
Yeah. It's like okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a bonus card, right? It's just a nice card to have in the Journey Below pool that you can sometimes just pull out. So.
Sjow is in not a great spot here. He could, I guess, play the High Main out there. Playing it back and hoping there's no second sap, and we see that there is a second sap.
There's also a Gadgetzan Auctioneer and a coin, which is about as bad as this turn could possibly go, unless we start seeing magical preparations flying off the top from this card draw. But suddenly the pressure of these aggressive minions from the Rogue is getting carried away. There is a third Tomb Pillager ready to come down now as well. And yeah, this is just mid-range Hunter doing what it just does some of the time, which is just get beaten up because the deck is just too slow and clunky.
Yeah.
Call of the Wild is going to happen here, but it's just not enough in this situation, as powerful as it is. You expect the Rogue to be able to deal with this efficiently. We see things like Shadow Strike in hand already, and yeah, this is just going to snowball. I think even the double Call of the Wild is unlikely to be enough here.
Yeah, yeah. He's going to be able to remove minions and play more minions and just keep on trucking.
Yeah.
So this Edwin gets to come out as a 6/6. It's sets up lethal with the minions on board. It's just too much damage for Sjow to take. He had a really slow opening, and this isn't a matchup particularly favored for Hunter anyway. Most of the time it's heavily skewed in favor of the Rogue just because they have the saps for your high mains. They have the backstabs and the SIs, all the tools for the early game. You even said that this version has the Hucksters as well for the early game. As Hunter just playing out 3/2s in the early game, you're going to lose the board most of the time. Eviscerate lines up so well with Animal Companion. Your cards just don't line up well against Rogue's removal for you to take the board early on in the game.
Yeah, I think on top of that, people have started playing scared in this matchup a lot as Hunter as well. Like we talked about the situation with the Brawl, with Sylvanas, where you respect them for having it.
Yeah.
I see in tournaments a lot, people just not playing high mains ever, and it's like, well, in that case, they always have sap. If you never play high main, they always have it.
True,
So.
true. Yeah, but in this case, Sjow didn't play scared. He played the high main on turn 6, and then he played it on 7, and it got sapped both times.
Yep.
Absolutely brutal.
But he gave himself a chance, right? If the sap wasn't there, he still would have had an effective play with the high main, but it didn't end up being enough. There was the double sap, the second one coming down with the card draw from the auctioneer as well. And Shtan Udachi takes a big scalp. Like I said, he is